And then 130, Your Honor, is just the handwritten note. I guess we'll just wait to deal with it when it comes in, because I just don't know what it is.
Okay.
But so
14, 30, and then you're flagging 130 is one that will need to, there may need to be some foundation / context set. I have down here, photo is a, 14 is a photo of ranch-patio.
Yes.
Perhaps it's that sign we heard about?
yeah, did we already talk about the sign? I missed it.
Pre-you, we
Yes.
heard about what the sign said.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. It says we don't dial 911. And there's the picture of the gun underneath it.
Okay. I see that. So your objection is?
It's irrelevant, and it's also ought to be excluded under 403.
Okay. Mr. Rucker? Ms. Convery, your witness?
Your Honor, yes, this will be my witness.
Sorry?
The photos that accompany 14 is a series of photographs of the ranch just depict the property the jury just heard about in detail from both parties. I intend to show the jury a series of photographs about the ranch, and of course this court knows that we expect the evidence to show that the ranch, the condition of it, and everything surrounding the circumstances of how it appeared are relevant to the state's case and what we need to prove.
Do you believe there's going to be any evidence that Mr. McIver was unaware of that sign being on the wall of his ranch?
But that is not my argument. My argument is he doesn't know about it. So now there's going to be other pictures the state will introduce that adequately depict the porch, that will adequately show this jury the condition of the ranch. They don't need to show this sign, which has, I can't understand what the probative value is at all, especially based on what the state just said. And B, it is unfairly prejudicial. And that the jury may look at this and go, oh, well, he has a sign that says we don't dial 911.
Okay. And then 30? Let's put 30 up, please.
30 is a picture from the interior of the ranch. I've zoomed, let me zoom out first.
That's okay. This is the wall of pictures. I haven't seen this picture, but
Right, and this is a picture, and I don't know if this witness knows, but so it shows somebody and they've got blackface on. It's a picture of Mr. McIver's grandfather from a long time ago.
Okay. If we unzoom it out for a second, I find it real hard to see what's in that one. Oh, but that's really one of the few things on it. What's the point of 30?
There are a series of, right around 30, there's sort of a walk through that hallway. That particular wall of the residence is family photographs, friends photographs. I intend to discuss with the witness sort of the layout of the ranch and how it is, each portion of the house is sort of decorated and arranged in detail. I don't intend to make any specific comment about State's Exhibit 30 or zoom or focus on that.
Is there something particularly relevant to the state's presentation to that ceiling corner of that hallway or room?
All of these photographs just depict the ranch as is.
Okay.
People would be coming to visit the ranch, and this is the condition that the guests and friends of the family would observe the ranch in.
Got it. And on 130, you're going to lay some foundation as to relevance, provenance, etc.
Yeah, I haven't marked it in this particular witness's folder because I intend to ask her questions about a conversation. This is a sort of photograph of a handwritten note that the defendant wrote. I do not intend to tender it with this witness, but should it become relevant, I wanted to have it marked for her.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it plays out.
It was something that was agreed. It's from the document, it's from the log, from the boxes, and this was in the first series of documents that we actually agreed on.
Okay, great. I will allow 14 to, assuming there's a foundation laid for it, to be admitted and published to the jury. I will not allow 30 to be presented to the jury, so I just skip over that. I don't think we need to renumber anything.
Yeah.
It'll just be you're presenting here a stack of photos, just 30's not in there, and we're not going to use 30 unless something really changes about what we're talking about.
While I have the court without the jury in here, I will just make an announcement from the record. I do intend to tender 2 photographs that contain images of Austin Schwall, who of course the court knows is a juvenile, State's Exhibit 4 and 5. I do not intend to publish those to the jury.
Okay, so they'll be admitted, ultimately, they may go back with the jury, we can work through that, but they will not be published.
Yes, and we may publish to the jury sort of privately, but I should have clarified, but I won't be projecting for media purposes because of the child's age.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Clark-Palmer? Are you going to have to do everything in this case? Anything else before we get started? No? Okay, let's bring the jury in, please.
Yes, Judge. Our jury members are accounted for, Your Honor. Please be seated.
Thank you, Deputy Murphy. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give you B- for switching seats, but some of you did a good job of sitting somewhere different. We are ready to begin the state's presentation of its case. During this break, it ran a little late, not because I forgot about you, but as I forecast, something did come up, and we needed to discuss a few items so that when the witness is in here, we have fewer potential interruptions. There may well be objections and whatnot, but the attorneys did a good job of saying, here's something we're concerned about up front, and we worked through that. The witness that it sounds like the state's going to call is going to take longer than we have before we break for lunch. We're going to break for lunch at about 12:30. I have to go to a meeting elsewhere in this building, so that's our hard stop. We'll start getting a sense for how long you all want for lunch. I want to respect your need to get away and recharge, but a 2-hour lunch will mean we have a whole lot less time in court. A 45-minute lunch means we have more time in court. So we'll see what works for you all in terms of getting someplace where you actually want to eat the food and getting back here and being ready to go. But expect that we'll stop right about 12:30 for our lunch break, and then we'll get back in action after that. So if the state will call its first witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Miss Janie Calhoun.
Janie Calhoun.
Ms. Calhoun, before we proceed, please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you should give the court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, ma'am. For the purposes of the court's record, please state your name and spell.
Janie Calhoun, JanieCalhoun. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Miss Calhoun.
Good morning.
You're soft-spoken like I am, so make sure that you scoot forward as close to that mic for me as you can.
Okay.
And speak up nice and loud into the microphone so everybody over there in the jury box can hear
Okay.
you. Let's start by having you introduce yourself to the members of the jury. Tell them your name again and how old you currently are.
Janie Calhoun, I'm 68 years old.
And are you currently working?
Yes.
Tell the jury, what do you do for work?
I work for Trinity Services Group. I'm a consultant in sales. In the jail and prison business, we do food services.
And how long have you been working for Trinity?
Since 1998.
And you're a consultant for Trinity, you said?
Yes.
Tell the jury a little bit about sort of your day-to-day role there at Trinity. What does your job have you doing on a regular basis?
I am marketing development sales, and I also do public relations for the company. Any contracts I have, I keep up with those contracts, entertain the clients. I do trade shows. That's all part of my job, and I just do it in Georgia right now.
And you said you just do it in Georgia right now?
Yes.
Before being assigned exclusively to Georgia, did your job take you other places?
North and South Carolina, a little bit in Texas.
And does your job require you to travel on a regular basis?
All over Georgia for sure, yes.
Okay. Are you currently living here in Atlanta?
Yes,
Do you split your time between Atlanta and anywhere else?
Dallas, Texas.
Tell the jury why that is.
My husband works out of Dallas, Texas. He's a consultant also, and that's his home base. We have a condo there that he works out of. He works in Oklahoma City, California, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico.
And how often is it that you are actually in Dallas?
For the last year, I've spent more time there than normal. I'm usually there about 2 weeks out of the month.
Back in 2016, did you and your husband share this Dallas-Atlanta sort of layout that you described to the jury you have now?
Yes, it was more on the weekends, but since all this happened, I'm spending a lot more time during the week there.
All right. Tell the jury, what is your husband's name?
Leslie Ball.
And how long have you all been married?
We've been married 10 years. We've been together 19 years.
So I want to start this morning by telling the jury was Diane McIver to you?
Diane and Tex lived in the condominium next door to me, and we became really good friends. She was like a sister to me. We spent an awful lot of time together, so we were back and forth to each other's condo a lot during the week.
I'm going to show you a series of photographs that, for the record, I have previously shown to defense counsel. So marked for identification as State's Exhibit 1 through 5.
No objection.
Can I approach?
You may. Both sides have continuing authority to approach witnesses to share exhibits and whatnot.
All right, Ms. Calhoun, I'm going to have you take a look at State's Exhibit 1 through 5. Let me know if you recognize those.
Yes.
And how do you recognize each of those photos?
The first one is Diane McIver. The second one is Diane McIver. The third one is Tex McIver. Fourth one is Diane and Austin Swall, their godchild. And the last one is Diane and Austin, their godchild.
And in each of the photos that you have in front of you, are they a fair and accurate depiction of the people that you just told the jury about?
Yes.
All right, this time the State's going to tender what's marked as 1 through 5 into evidence.
No objection?
Correct.
Okay, they're admitted.
Is that permission published?
You do.
Tell the jury who is in State's Exhibit 1.
Diane McIver.
And you told the jury that the two of you were like sisters. Tell them how your relationship, how is it that you first met Diane?
I had met Diane probably years back in the early 90s, but it was because of the legislature and Billy Corey, her employer. I had met her, but I did not know her personally. When we moved into our condo, which is next to theirs, that was in 2005, the end of 2005, and I met her again at that time, and then in 2006 we got to be really close. We spent a lot of time together.
And what was it about 2006 that brought you and Diane to be close friends?
Because we were neighbors, I think. We went out to dinner some, and just she and I were both a lot alike. We both were hardworking business people. We both grew up very poorly and worked our way up to where we're at in our position. So it's we had a lot of the same things in common.
And as you continue to become closer to Diane and get to know her, do you also kind of get an understanding for who she is as a businesswoman?
Very smart. She was very strong. She had built Corey Industries, I felt like, to the point that it's at right now.
And you mentioned Billy Corey before. Tell the jury, who is Billy Corey?
Billy Corey is over, I believe it's more called U.S. Enterprises, but most everybody looked at it as Corey Industries.
And what is your understanding of what they do at U.S. Enterprises? Kind of work?
They had advertising. At one time, they had a lot of liquor stores. They owned a lot of real estate. They did airport advertising, and that was one of Diane's big things she pushed to get forward, and it was a big opportunity for them.
Do you know what Diane's role was at U.S. Enterprises, what her sort of title was there?
She was president.
And in your time getting to know her and becoming close to her, did you did you learn her story with Corey when she started there?
She started back when she was 19 years old. She put herself through college at night and worked with, Corey the whole time and just moved up within the industry.
Did you have occasion to get to know or meet Mr. Corey as you sort of developed your friendship with Mr. McIver?
I knew Billy Corey probably before Diane because of the legislature. I was a lobbyist at one time and was at the legislative sessions a lot, so I had heard about and met Billy Corey, attended a lot of functions with him.
And were Billy Corey and Diane close?
Yes, very close.
Describe for the jury a little bit more about that relationship. Was it boss-employee, or was it different in any way?
It was boss, employee, but Billy came over to her condo a lot during the week, especially after Austin, their godchild, was born, and Billy loved being around Austin too, so he would come over a lot at night and have dinner and see him when Austin was there.
And in your time getting to know Diane, did you also know the defendant, Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Tell the jury how you first met the
I first met Tex back in 1997. Got to know him a lot better when he and Diane got married.
And did the couple have any children that you know of?
Tex and Diane not together, no.
Did Diane have any children from her previous marriage?
No.
What about Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
He had 3 children.
Okay. And do you know about how old they were in, well, let's talk about 2016. You know about how old his children were?
I have no idea. Really don't.
That's allowed. You mentioned Austin. Tell the jurors, who is Austin?
Austin is Diane and Tex's godchild.
And when did Austin come into Diane's life, you know?
Right after he was born, and that was in 2007, I believe.
Okay, and I showed you before and previously been admitted States Exhibit 4 and 5. And for the record, I'm just going to approach the jury to publish. I'm going to show them first. States Exhibit 4.
Yes.
Tell the jury, what are we looking at in States Exhibit 4?
That's Diane McIver and Austin Swall.
Can you tell about how old he is in this photo?
Oh, looks like he's around 7 or 8.
Tell the jury, I'm going to show also for the record States Exhibit 5. Do you recognize where States Exhibit 5 is taken?
It looks like at the ranch,
Okay.
just from that picture.
Tell the jurors, if you would, a little bit about Diane and Austin's relationship.
He was like her son she never had. She loved him dearly. She and Tex both did.
In your time with Diane and becoming close friends with her, about how often during a regular week would you say that you saw Diane?
At least 2 or 3 times a week.
And how often would you see Austin there?
He was there at least a couple of times a week, sometimes more than that.
We just showed the jurors a photograph that you described as being taken at the ranch. Tell the jurors, when you say the ranch, what are you talking about?
It was in Putnam County. It was a big house. They had a lake out in front, and then there was a house behind the house. They called it the saloon, but it had a bedroom and it had the stables for the horses, and that was there.
In your time getting to know both of them, had you actually been out to the ranch yourself?
Yes.
And when you would go out to the ranch, where would you stay?
If my husband was with me, we stayed out in the saloon, as they called it. It had a master suite out there, and if I went with just Diane and Tex, and sometime Danny Carter would go with us, I would sleep in Austin's bedroom in the main house.
All right. Your Honor, I won't ask you. I'm going to show you Ms. Calhoun what has been marked as States Exhibit 6 through 69, except for 30, and as well as States Exhibit 163 and 164. You had a chance to previously look at these photos for me.
Yes.
Will you just quickly flip through them? Let me know if you recognize them.
Okay.
6 through 69, except for 30. 163, 164. Is there a supplemental exhibit list, or I should just, this goes to 161.
Yes, Your Honor, we will have a supplemental.
Okay, great.
These are all made at the ranch.
And in this first, well, we'll talk about all of them. In States Exhibit 6 through 69, and then 163, 164, do you recognize each of those photographs?
Yes.
And how do you recognize each of those images we're talking about?
These were at the ranch, or on the ranch. They were where we did shooting practice.
Okay, and you're talking about 163 and 164?
Yes,
For the rest of the photographs, do you recognize them as the ranch as well?
yes.
And for each of those photos, does it appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of the ranch as you remember it, and your personal experience being out there on that property?
Yes, I didn't see the rooms where the guns and the bullets were all kept. I don't think I ever was in
Okay.
there.
Let me know which of those images that you don't recognize. I'll take those out.
I don't remember seeing that.
This is the first
There's-
The rest of these photographs that we're talking about, are they a fair and accurate depiction of the ranch property as you personally remember it?
Yes.
All right, then, Your Honor. I'm going to tender as previously marked, except for States Exhibit,
I might have got them out of order.
okay, 53 through 68.
So 6 through 52, except for 30, and then 69, 163, and 164.
Exactly.
Okay. We talked about one of those images outside the presence of the jury. You preserved that objection. Anything else?
I was going to have an objection, but I think we have dealt with it. I'm just confirming. Okay, so other than as previously stated, no objection.
Okay, I'll admit those.
Thank you. Tell the jury what we're looking at in States Exhibit 6.
That is the entrance as you're coming to, well, it's the fence that is around the property itself, and you see the front lake, and the house is at the back of that.
Just so we can orient the jury.
Stop.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It's very difficult for us to hear over here because witnesses behind the court's bench.
Sure.
I'll lean forward. Is that better?
Thank you.
Sorry, I have a soft voice.
Okay.
All right, so just so we can orient the jury when we're looking at States Exhibit 6, and you can actually, if the court's monitor is working, you can actually press on the screen so you can mark. Tell the jurors how you would approach that property if you're pulling up there in a car.
To the left of the white fence, there's a cement driveway that goes into the drive where the house is.
So on the far left side of the image there.
Yes.
You can do it 7. What do we see in State 7?
Yes, that's the driveway coming up to the house, and where the cars are parked out front, there's like a circular drive, and then to the left, it's where the car garage is.
Do you see the circular
Yes.
drive you're talking about in State
Yes.
7? And this, the house that we're looking at in States Exhibit 9, is that what you're sort of describing as the main house?
Yes.
States Exhibit 11.
That is the driveway if you would be coming in or leaving the house. It's coming around the circle is where it is, and then there's a walkway that goes down to where the lake is.
Is the lake, sort of what you see there as you approach the property on the front?
Yes.
Are there any other bodies of water on the property?
Yes. There's a lake behind the saloon house.
And for the jurors who haven't been out there, how would you describe this saloon?
It was more an entertainment, I guess, and for their guests to stay in. It had a big entertainment area with TVs, and then upstairs there was a master bedroom, and I think there were 2 more bedrooms.
And where is that in relation to the main house that you just looked at?
It's exactly right behind it. There's a pool in between and a little walkway over to that house.
Okay, what do these mean, Stacy's porch?
This is the porch as you're coming into it's a screen-in porch that as you're coming into the back of the main house, and that door is the entrance into where the kitchen is.
Is the front of this area we're looking at actually screened in?
Yes.
Describe for the jurors, as you're looking at this photo, and some of the other ones we're going to look at, how was this property decorated?
Very Western, I was brought up on a farm in South Georgia, so to me it's very country also. The signs that were depicted were a lot of things that you would see.
And State Exhibit 15, is that another angle of that same?
Yes, same back porch.
Right, and what about State Exhibit 17?
That's still part of the screened-in back porch. It goes out to where the pool is, behind the main house.
The water that we see in 17, is that the pool?
Yes, it is.
State Exhibit 19 might be a better angle. Do you see any area in State Exhibit 19 where there will be livestock, cattle, cows, horses?
It would be, I don't know if you can see me pointing, but it would be to the right side of where the pool is. There's a...
Press very hard on your screen.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that it works up there in this corner.
No, it's not working here. But there's a fence, and the wood fence, and that's where the cattle and the horses are behind that.
When you're out on the property, did you ever horseback ride?
I did once or twice.
Do you remember about how many horses were on the property?
Oh, goodness. I think that there were maybe 8 or 10.
What about cows, if you know?
Oh, there were a lot of cows. I have no idea, but a lot. And a lot of baby calves, yes.
Do you have an idea, as you sit there, about the size of the property, about how big it was?
I think it was around 75 or 80 acres, I think.
What was these Exhibit 20, just right there?
I'm sorry?
What's in State Exhibit 20?
That's the dining room in the main house.
Okay, and State Exhibit 22?
That would be that was their den area. It was right off the kitchen.
Also the main house?
Yes.
What about State Exhibit 25?
This looks like Austin's playroom, which probably would have been a sitting area if a long time ago before Austin came along. But that was his toy room.
Okay, where in the, if you're walking into the front doors of the main house, where is the playroom?
It's on the left-hand side as you walk into the front door.
And State Exhibit 26?
This is their den living area that looks back into the kitchen in the main house.
So through the sort of windows of this walkway, that's the kitchen, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Can you see anything in State Exhibit 26 that you also associate with Austin, or Austin being there in the ranch?
His high chair that he sat in probably until he was 8 or 9 years old. He loved those high chairs.
Sat in the high chair, okay.
He just loved them.
Obviously, Austin, the jury can see, we've been talking about Austin actually being out at the ranch. Tell the jury a little bit about Austin's birthday parties at the ranch. Have you ever been in attendance?
Yes.
And what were those like?
They were great parties for a little boy growing up. Petting zoo. A lot of his friends would come in from Atlanta and be at the party. And he pretty much, through Diane and Tex, met all of their adult friends, so there were a lot of all of us there at his parties also.
And who was responsible for hosting those parties?
Tex and Diane.
In State's Exhibit 31, you're still looking at the main house.
No, this is the saloon house behind the house, I guess.
And what is just so the jury can get oriented, what's the perspective from this picture? Where is?
Okay, the door that is opening right there is coming in from the main entertainment area, and the stairs go up to the master suite.
As you're walking into this property, I think you told the jury you'd actually stay here yourself.
Yes.
What is on either side of the walls there, if you remember?
There's a TV on one side. There's a bar that's on the left-hand side. There's a pool table as you come right into that entertainment room.
And I'm sorry, I probably asked a bad question. It says Exhibit 31, what you see there, just right there in the stairwell. Do you remember what's depicted on either side of the walls there?
A lot of pictures. Maybe I just need my glasses on. More pictures.
Guest house or main house?
That's the guest house. This is more where the stables and where all the working tools for the ranch were kept.
Horses out here?
Items for the horses were there, but the horses were mainly outside. This looks like it's in the wine cellar, is where this is. Yes, in the wine cellar. Yes.
Where in the house or guest house is 641?
It's up under where the den living space is. They dug out up under the house and built it, but you enter it from where all the tools to work on the ranch, there's a door that goes into it from that hallway in the back.
Is it 42, another angle the same?
Yes.
We can see a lot of wine in States 42.
Yes.
Who is the wine person?
They both were wine collectors. They knew a lot of people in the business, boutique wineries, and
Any particular kind of wine that you recall?
a lot of different kinds. Reds, whites, cabs, they love to collect wine.
In your time getting to know Diane and Tex and being out at this property, did you have occasion to drink wine with them?
Yes,
Both fans of red wine?
yes.
Outside on the property, State's Exhibit 164. Tell the jury, what do you see there?
That's the target practice mound.
And where, if you're coming up that front drive there and we're sort of looking at the main house in that circular area we talked about, where is this in relation to that?
It's further back on the property, back in the woods, in the property
You
access.
actually went out there yourself?
Yes.
Tell the jury what kind of goes on at the backside of the property where this mound is.
We would practice target shooting, either with plastic containers out there, or we had the target shooting, just, I don't know what you call them, but anyway, we would see how close we could get, I guess, to the dots on that.
And in your time out at the ranch, have you actually been out there to target practice or shoot with Mr. McIver?
Tex and Diane both were there.
In your time getting to know the couple and being friends with Mr. and Ms. McIver, did you have the occasion to see Mr. McIver have and use handguns?
Yes.
About how often would you say?
We didn't go target shooting every time I was there, but maybe if I was there once every couple of months, we would do it. I don't know if they did every weekend, but we'd go target shooting when I was there.
And in your time target shooting or being with the couple while there's handguns, would Austin sometimes be around?
A few times he was there, yes.
And were you able to hear Mr. McIver talk to Austin or anyone else about gun safety?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
He was always very cautious with all of us, making sure we held the guns down after we shot. Of course, I had never shot a 9mm, so I had problems with my hands pulling the revolver thing back, but he would load the gun for me. But yes, he was very good at teaching Austin all the safety, how to hold it, keep it down, don't point it up,
And talk to you about safety as well.
Yes.
In your experience out there, when he would talk to you and assist you with loading the gun, in your opinion, was he fairly knowledgeable about weapons?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Your Honor, she has a basis for personal opinion on that specific issue.
I will allow it based on the foundation laid.
How often would the two of you, would you say, about the same estimation that you gave to the jury before, about how often the two of you would be shooting or around weapons, you and Mr. McIver?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure, kind of I asked it weird. How often would you be around guns with the defendant, Mr. McIver? About?
I think I stated earlier, maybe if I was there twice, 2 times, 2 months, maybe we would go shooting one of those times. I don't think we went every time I was there, but I don't know how often they did it when I was not there.
Sure. One of the things, or one of the people you mentioned earlier was Janie Joe. Tell the jury, who is Patricia Carter?
She was a really good friend of Diane's. I think they've been friends for about 40 years.
And was she, from being friends with Diane, fair to say that you got to know her as well?
Through Diane, yes.
And what was her nickname? What does she go by?
Danny.
Okay. How often would you say that you saw Danny Joe either at the ranch or the Buckhead condo? About?
Okay, maybe once every couple of months.
Okay. And would some of those times be at the ranch, or were they almost exclusively at the Buckhead property?
I saw her more at the condo than I did at the ranch. I think Danny went to the ranch a lot more with her than I did.
We talked about the condo, and I think you told the jury that your condos were close. Describe sort of, if you would, for people who haven't been to your building, sort of the layout of your condos in relation to the McIvers.
Okay. Our building is a 58-unit building. It's sort of a small, not a high-rise. It had 4 units to each floor. And Diane had put 2 units together on the right-hand side of our floor, and then there was a lobby in between. And I had a unit on the opposite side, and there was one directly across from me.
And so did you all have to share an elevator?
No, there were 2 elevators that came up to each floor. It didn't just come off on your floor, it went to every floor in the building.
And was there a common hallway at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you a series of photos that I've shown to defense, and it's going to be 60 to 70. 162, and then State's Exhibit 70 through 88.
Okay.
You've seen these before, but take a
Yes.
quick look through those for me.
70 through 88 and 162?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you recognize those?
Yes.
How do you recognize those pictures?
Some of the pictures are of my unit and some of our lobby hallway in between our units. And this one is in Diane's 2 units that she put together. It's the hallway that connects the 2 units.
Okay, and because this one kind of does not go with the other, State's Exhibit 88, you recognize that as well?
Yes, it was Tex vehicle.
For each of those images, 70 through 88 and 162, do they appear to be fair and accurate depictions of what we're talking about?
Yes.
All right, the State's going to tender 70 through 88 and 162.
No objection, Your Honor.
Those are admitted.
Let's start with State's Exhibit 162. And the jury scene 162.
Okay. What was your question?
What's in 162?
This is the hallway between the 2 units that Diane had put together. So that was how you went from one unit into the other, unless you were outside in the hallway. They had 2 separate front doors. But if
This
you
is
were,
an internal image?
Yes.
Not you were calling it the lobby that
Yeah.
separates your unit from those 2?
correct, this was inside their unit.
And the image that we're looking at in 162, this is there because she made 2 condos, 1 condo, is that right?
Yes, correct.
And the table and the mirrors and all that, that's who's doing is that?
Diane's.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 73. Tell the jury what it's in 73.
That's our lobby area in between our units.
When you say our, who are you?
Well, Diane and Tex's unit, you're seeing straight in front of you, and then the 2 elevators are the dark elevators on the right-hand side, and then the section in the middle is our lobby that separates their units and mine and another lady that lived across from me.
State's Exhibit 72.
This is the living room of my condo.
So the seating area there right when you walk in.
Yes.
For jurors who have not been into the McIver condo, how would you describe that unit? You told us it was once 2 and now 1. How else would you describe it?
The one unit on the left-hand side, if you're facing going into their units, was, I call it their main living condo. That's where their master suite was, their living area, kitchen. The unit that was combined on the right-hand side was more entertainment, big, huge TV, and it had a master suite on that side.
How did parking work?
We have parking levels that we pull in up under the building, and we have 2 parking spaces for each unit.
I'm showing you on the screen right now 83. Do you tell the jury what we're looking at 83?
Okay, if you pull in to the front of our building, there's a visitor parking area that is on the main level, right as you go up under the building. So this is the parking for visitors.
And you actually have an assigned level if you're...
Yes, you go up through a closed gate, and we all have, there's like, I think it's 3 floors, really double floors, I guess it's 6 floors of parking. You have 2 assigned places.
Is State's Exhibit 82 one of those areas or more of this area?
That's still the visitor parking.
State's Exhibit 88. Tell the jury how you recognize that photo.
That is Tex McIver's SUV.
And in 2016, before Diane passed, do you remember about where the couple usually parked this vehicle?
Their parking is on the top main level. They had 4 parking spots because they had 2 units. And they were parked on the main level. P3, it's called to us.
Tell the jury, Ms. Calhoun, if you can, in your time getting to know Diane McIver, did you know her to loan people money on a regular basis?
She did loan some people money that were friends or that worked for her.
And tell the jurors, in Diane's terms, what was a loan? What did it mean to loan somebody money?
Well, she always wrote up the loan and made sure they paid her back.
And when you say wrote up, what's that mean?
It was usually a paper, loan that was written up between she and the person she was loaning the money to. She did tell me that.
Did she ever talk to you about loaning her husband any money?
Only once.
I'm going to object as to hearsay. We're getting into things that Mrs. McIver told this witness.
Your Honor, I don't expect the witness to, and I can rephrase my question so that I'm not going into any hearsay. I expect the answer to be not requiring hearsay, but I can rephrase if that's okay.
Okay. Why don't you rephrase, although be mindful that if the way in which this witness is answering the question is premised on hearsay, we may well get the same objection that I'll probably sustain.
Did you know, without telling me about any conversations, did you know if Ms. McIver ever loaned her husband any money?
It's still objection, Your Honor. Same objection.
Right. I guess the trick here is you need to lay the foundation, and so if you want to ask, is the way you know that because Ms. McIver told you, then sort of the cat's out of the bag and we've got the issue. So I think you hopefully know how Ms. Calhoun would know that. If you have a good faith basis to believe it's something other than hearsay, you should keep going. Otherwise, different topic.
I understand. In your time with Diane, would she talk to you about personal things?
Yes.
Would you describe her as a private person, or tell the jury just a little bit about whether or not she would disclose to you personal things?
Okay. State that again.
Okay, that was that question. Would Ms. McIver disclose personal things to you on a regular basis?
Yes.
And did that include things about her relationship with Mr. McIver?
In what way?
In any way. Would she talk to you about her relationship with her husband?
Yes. How much she loved him and that he was the right person for her when he came along.
And prior to you becoming close with, just so the jury can kind of understand, prior to you becoming close with the McIvers, you told them you actually knew Mr. McIver before, correct?
Yes.
Tell the jury, had you actually had a some sort of a relationship outside of just a friendship with him before you became close with Diane?
1997, I had met Tex. And yes, we went out for a few months.
And this is before you knew Diane?
Yeah, yes.
Would you describe your relationship with him as boyfriend-girlfriend, or not even that?
Not really. It was such a short amount of time, and I was traveling a lot, and he was traveling a lot, so we did not see each other that much.
After that couple of months that you all went out, did you maintain a friendship after that?
I didn't see him much after that.
And why is that?
I was traveling, he was traveling, I was too busy. I had to do a lot of trade shows, so I was on the road a lot on the weekends.
And when Mr. McIver sort of came back into your life as a friend, was it with Diane or for some other reason? I met him at the villas, I saw him at the villas where we lived the same weekend that I met my husband now. And the villas, we're talking about the
Condominium.
Show me the pictures. To your knowledge, did Diane know about your previous dating history with Mr. McIver?
Yes, we laughed about it. So did my husband, I'll add to that.
Sure. I'm trying to bust it down. Tell the jurors, who is Terry Brown, if you know?
Terry was Diane's assistant at Corey.
And in your time being friends with Ms. McIver, would that take you out to the Corey property from time to time? Had you actually been there before?
To Billy Corey's property?
The company, U.S. Enterprise.
Oh, yes, I had been there, yes.
And your knowledge about who Terry Brown was, is that just from being out there, or did you have other ways that you knew?
I met Terry, I believe I met him first at dinner with Diane and Tex and Terry through business dinner. And
How would you describe Terry and Diane's relationship?
she said he was the best assistant she ever had. He was very smart. Said the same thing that Billy Corey she didn't think he ever needed anyone, but he couldn't do without Terry. He was very good technology-wise and all of that, so.
And did you understand them from your closeness to her and being out there to be close?
State that one more time.
Sure. Did you know if they were close or not?
Terry
Yes.
and Diane?
Yes.
Yes.
Tell the jurors, who is Kathy Johansson?
Kathy Johansson used to live in our building, the condominium building at the Villas. She doesn't live there anymore.
And was Kathy a friend of Diane's, if you know?
She used to be.
And what changed about their relationship?
It was something over something at work, a working relationship that I think they had a falling out about, and they still were not speaking at the time Diane passed away.
About how long before Diane passed had this rift with Diane and Kathy Johansson happened?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the extent, I'm not sure we've laid the foundation as to how Ms. Calhoun knows about the rift. So to the extent we're relying on hearsay from Mrs. McIver, I would object and move to strike her answer to the last question.
Okay.
And some of this, Your Honor, we might deal with on a break for an issue that's pending before the court, but I can move on in the meantime, that's fine.
Okay. Well, I think the question you're asking, you can ask if you want. You can move to a different topic.
Did you have, just briefly on this issue, did you have personal knowledge of her sort of rift with Mrs. Johansson?
No.
I'm sorry. All right.
Tell the jurors if you remember, when was the last time that you saw Diane before she passed?
The Friday before she passed on Monday morning.
And what was going on that Friday?
They were going to the ranch that weekend. She had invited me to go with them. Danny Carter was
Your Honor,
going.
I'm sorry, I object again. I feel like we're still just dealing a lot in hearsay. It's what Ms. McIver said she was going to do on Friday, September 23rd.
Okay. I'm going to allow in testimony that she was invited. We can keep going.
You can continue.
I was going down to the fitness center to work out, and Diane was doing her stretching out in our lobby hallway, which is what she and I did. And I told her that morning, I said, I'm not going to the ranch with y'all this weekend because Les, my husband, had been on a business trip and he got back in early, so I was flying to Dallas so I could be with him.
That was a change of plans.
Yes.
Did you talk to Diane again after you left?
I talked to her on Saturday. She always, if I was in Dallas or out of town, she would call and check on me and see how I was doing.
She actually called you from the ranch?
Yes.
And so did you actually go to Dallas then that weekend?
Yes, I did.
And how is it that you first learned that Diane had been killed?
My husband left on Sunday, so I was there by myself in Dallas Sunday night, and when I woke up the next morning, I had text messages from Tex and from Danny to call them as soon as I got up.
And did either of the text messages communicate any other details besides just
No.
asking for a call?
No,
And who did you call first when you got up?
I called Tex first.
And tell the jury about that conversation.
He said there's, from the best I can remember now, he said there's really something bad happened, and I asked what, and he said to Diane, he said, she's not with us anymore. And I asked what happened. I said, are you kidding? What happened? And he said, she's dead, and I can't talk about it anymore on the phone. I can't talk right now. And I didn't have a flight to get back until late that afternoon, so.
Did you communicate with Mr. McIver anymore before you actually got back to Atlanta?
No.
And tell the jury what happened once you arrived back in Atlanta.
Once I got back, I went over to their condo, and there were a lot of people there. I don't even remember who all. I think I was pretty much in a daze, too. It was really hard to be traveling on an airplane with that kind of information.
And did you have any other information outside of what Mr. McIver had told you?
No.
When you say there were a lot of people at their condo, whose condo are you talking about?
Tex and Diane's.
And about how many people would you say?
I would say 15, 20, maybe 20 people there.
And this is the Monday after Diane passed?
Yes, Monday night.
What do you do once you get back to your condo?
After I was over there, you mean?
Well, the first thing that you do when you come into the building, yes.
Oh, well, I went and put my bags up and then went straight over there.
And what were you able to talk to the defendant Mr. McIver, once you were at the condo?
I told him how sorry I was, and he said the same thing for me, and we hugged each other in tears, but that's all I remember at the moment.
And after stopping at the McIver condo, do you go back over to your condo at some point?
Yes.
And what happens then?
Danny Jo stayed with me that night. She said she didn't want to go home, so I told her she could stay with me in my guest room at my place. So she did.
Do you know where she stayed the first night on Sunday night?
I don't know. I think she said she was at... Oh, sorry. Yeah.
If we're going to go into something that Danny Jo said, or this is going to speculate as to where Ms. Carter stayed.
That's fine. All right.
Okay, next question.
How many nights did Danny Jo stay with you?
I believe it was 2 nights.
And in your time being back in Atlanta, sort of on the condo property, do you know if there were other people in the McIver condo besides Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Tell the jury, who is Annie Catterton?
I know her more as Annie Anderson, but she was a friend of Diane. She was their masseuse. She went down to the ranch a lot with them. She loved to work with the horses. She was more a nutritionalist. Diane was a healthy person, so she liked to come up with things for Diane to try in nutrition-wise.
And did she work exclusively with Diane, or was she also working with Mr. McIver as well?
With Mr. McIver as well, and other people.
And the days after Mr. McIver's passing, was Annie Catterton at the condo?
Yes.
And did she actually stay at the condo?
Yes.
We talked about the phone call, the text message and the phone call that you got from Mr. McIver. Was that on your cell phone?
Yes,
Do you remember what your cell phone number was at that time?
same as it is now, 404-202-8101.
The days, sort of going now into the week after Ms. McIver's passing, did you have the opportunity to meet with anyone else who's close with Diane at your condo?
Billy Corey and Jay Grover were at my condo.
So we told the jury who Billy Corey is, who is Jay Grover.
Billy owns Corey Enterprises or U.S. Industries, and Jay is I call him his right-hand man. He does whatever he needs to do to help Billy.
And is Jay somebody, if you know, that was close to Diane?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so about what day, if you remember, did they come over to your condo?
It was in the first week. I think it was maybe the third or fourth day of that first week.
And what was the purpose of them coming over that day?
Jay called me and asked, Jay Grover called and asked, could they come to my condo?
I'm sorry, objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Okay, I can rephrase.
Okay, and him asking a question isn't necessarily a declaration, but if you want to rephrase it, that might help.
Sure. Just without telling us what someone else told you, at some point did you learn that they wanted to have a conversation with you and Danny Joe?
They wanted to have a conversation with Danny, Joe, and Tex.
Not you.
No.
And did they then go ahead and come over after you all had that conversation?
Yes.
Are you at a natural break point?
Yes.
Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is just about lunchtime for us. So I'm going to ask you all to retire to the jury room. You're free to go wherever you want for lunch. Why don't we try out, do you all think an hour is enough time for lunch? We'll try that out. If that's more than enough time, tell me, and going forward, we can shrink it a little bit. Of course, other folks need lunch breaks too. And if it's not enough time, we'll find out, because we'll be back here at 1:30 and you won't be. Then we'll know an hour wasn't enough. Feel free to go wherever you want. It's fine for you to eat with each other. You don't have to be isolated 15 individuals. Don't talk about the case, though, when you're together. Talk about anything else you want. So I'm leaving you a lot of options. Just don't talk about the case, because we don't deliberate yet. And no outside research. Don't see what the media has been trying to say about what you have now seen and heard as jurors. Otherwise, have a great lunch. Maybe a little chilly out there. Bundle up, and we'll see you back here as close to 1:30 as you can make it.
All rise for the juror.
1:30.
Please be seated. You all should be back. Well, is there anything we need to talk about before we break? Well, Ms. Calhoun will be back on stand after the break. Are there things that we need to?
I don't believe so, just because yesterday Mr. Rucker and Mr. Harvey spoke about the one isolated statement we talked about in the state's 807 motion, and because I'm going to just tailor it to that statement, I don't expect there to be any issues.
Okay, that was my understanding as well, but sands can shift. If that's true, then maybe you guys can get back pretty close to 1:30. Anything from the defense before we break? Okay, during the break, state, we need a copy of an exhibit list for Ms. Harris. Ideally, an exhibit list that goes up to the numbers you're using and doesn't cut off short of that. So one for me and one for Ms. Harris. That's two. And one for how about for the defense?
The original, but not the updated.
Okay, so 4 copies. Just make sure everyone's happy. We are picking up where we left off. The state was in the midst of its direct examination of Ms. Calhoun. Ms. Calhoun is still under oath. And we'll ask Ms. Convery to continue with her questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Ms. Calhoun, when we left off, we were talking about a conversation that took place inside your condo. Is that correct?
Yes.
And tell the jurors what happened during that conversation, who was present?
Billy Corey was there, Jay Grover was there, Danny was there at one time, and Tex McIver was there at one time.
All right, and I'm going to show you on the screen State's Exhibit 72.
Yes.
Can you see in State 72 where the conversation that we're talking about took place?
Yes.
And where is this?
This is in the living room of my condo.
And you said at one point Danny Joe was there, and at one point Mr. McIver was there. Tell the jurors how that came to be, the different parties got there.
Well, Billy wanted to talk to Danny to find out what her side of what happened at the accident.
And did that conversation occur?
Yes.
At some point later, then, does Mr. McIver come over?
Yes.
And why is that?
Billy wanted to know the same thing from Tex.
And when Mr. McIver came over, where was he seated in the setup that we see here in State's Exhibit 72?
He was seated in the first seat, the chair, on the
Closest to the window or closest to the...
closest to the wall, so not the window.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. And where was everyone else seated as we look here at State's Exhibit 72?
I believe Jay was in the other chair, and Billy and I were on the sofa.
All right. The markings that you see there on the screen in front of you, is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Once Mr. McIver comes over into the condo, what does he say to you all?
What did Tex say?
Yeah.
Billy told him he just wanted to give...
I'm sorry, objection to the hearsay about what Mr. Corey said.
Sorry.
That's okay. And it wasn't, repeat your question, and let's focus on what Mr. McIver had to say.
It was, and I'm sorry if I phrased it wrong. My
Okay.
question is what Mr. McIver said once he came over into the condo.
Okay, he said what he remembered was that they were stopped, and the next thing he knew, the gun had gone off and there was smoke in the car, and Diane said she had been shot, and that was pretty much what was said at that point.
And as you sit here today, did Mr. McIver ever give you more information about how Diane McIver got killed or got shot on that evening?
No.
After the conversation that we've been talking about here in State's Exhibit 72, how does that conversation come to an end? How does that close, or he leave the condo eventually?
Not being able to bring other people's conversation into it, he just said, if that's all you need to know, I need to get back over to my condo. Pretty much those were his words, maybe not his exact words, but...
And this conversation happened when, in the context of when Miss McIver was killed? About how many days after?
It was in the first week after she passed.
In that same period of time, in the first week after Miss McIver passed, were there other people in and out of the condo next door, in and out of the McIver's condo?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And were some of those people family members of Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And at some point in that first week, do you learn about an inventory of Miss McIver's items?
So, objection. Could we have a little more foundation to make sure we're not getting into hearsay?
Sure.
Do you have a conversation in that first week being requested to inventory those items?
So, still hearsay, unless we can clarify who the conversation is with.
So, just I want to understand your objection. Hypothetically, if the question is, did someone ask you to make a request for you to do an inventory? What's the truth of the matter asserted in a request? Would you please do this?
don't know how it happened, if it was a request or it was a statement that something needed to be done.
Or even a command. You must do an inventory, but I'm just trying to work through what the hearsay part of that is, as opposed to explaining what then perhaps Ms. Calhoun did next.
Well, that's not what the question, so if the question is going to be, did you do something, and we're trying to get to why she did something, that's not the question that was asked. To explain some conduct that she did.
Okay, I may have misunderstood, so why don't you ask the question again, I'll hear it again, and then I'll let you know, Ms. Calhoun, I'm sorry, we do need to work through these things.
And that is my question, Your Honor, is was she requested to assist with an inventory at some point there in that first week after Ms. McIver's passing?
No, I was not.
At some point, did you learn about, did you have personal knowledge of an inventory that took place?
So don't answer that. So that's a different question, and I think that the defense's concern, did you learn about, did someone assert to you that an inventory was done?
Sure, and my question isn't about a statement that she received, but personal knowledge about an event that took place.
If you want to ask her what she saw going on, you can ask her about that. Otherwise, I guess you'd need to lay a foundation without getting into what someone may have told Ms. Calhoun about something happening or not happening.
Sure. In your time in the condo that you shared a hallway with in that week immediately following Ms. McIver's death, did you observe actions being done to inventory or catalog Mrs. McIver's belongings?
I'm sorry, I still object. I think we need a little more foundation. How can she quantify whether an action was related to doing an inventory?
I guess you just need to ask her what she saw and then see where that goes.
Right, and she's free to answer the question, and if she didn't see anything, she didn't see anything.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. The question assumes facts that are not evidence, that an inventory was going on. So if she says, I saw people moving clothes in and out of the hallway, we haven't had a foundation to establish how she would know what was going on.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem with the question being just, what did you observe?
Okay.
But the question can't be, did you observe something in connection with people doing an inventory?
I think that's a fair point.
Let me ask it this way.
Last try.
Ms. Calhoun, were you ever asked to inventory or catalog or assist with the inventory or catalog of any of Mrs. McIver's items?
No.
And do you remember, in relation to the investigation of this case, having a conversation with members of the district attorney's office? A couple different times.
Yes.
And one of those times is in January of 2017. Do you recall that?
Don't remember the exact date, but
At some point early in 2017, do you remember having a conversation with Mr. Rucker and other investigators from my office at Alon's near the perimeter?
yes.
Okay. And in that conversation, do you remember investigators and other individuals from the district attorney's office having a conversation with you about a request that was made of you to inventory those items?
I don't remember that I was made a request. I remember a conversation that I asked about the catalog of her clothing.
And so your testimony today before the jury is that it was not a request, that this is something that you had a conversation about with other members of the people in that other condo, or with who?
I could not.
Okay. I objected for asking her about a conversation she had with other people in the condo.
It's
The question I heard was simply, with whom did you talk, not what was said, and I'll allow that question. I think some boundaries are being appropriately established, that we're not getting into contents of communication, except for certain communications. So if you'd repeat the question, so the record shows where you are. If you asked what I thought you asked, it was, do you recall having a conversation, or with whom it was? Your question, not mine.
Yes, and I don't remember the exact wording, but at some point, Ms. Calhoun, you're talking to investigators from my office about a conversation that you had related to the inventory we've been talking about. Who was that conversation with?
It was with Mr. Rucker and a few of his staff. I don't remember everybody.
And I'm sorry, I'm talking about the conversation related to the inventory that you told Mr. Rucker about. Who was that conversation with?
That was with Tex's sister, Dixie Martin.
And when did that conversation take place?
It was in October. I'd say the maybe second or third week in October. I'm not exactly sure.
And during the conversation with Mr. Rucker and other investigators from my office, do you remember being able to describe a time frame that was closer to Mrs. McIver's passing there in that first week?
The dates are a little bit blurry right now because it's been a year and a half. I did have the conversation with his sister, and I think it was the end of October when she was there. I mean, the 1st of October, I'm sorry.
And is it possible that the conversation we've been talking about occurred in the week after Mrs. McIver's passing?
That's possible.
Did you ever assist?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Objection to relevance.
What's the relevance?
That's fine, Your Honor, I can move on.
Okay.
When we were talking about the conversation that you had with Mr. McIver's sister, Dixie, what did you ask her?
Well, objection, hearsay.
What she asked another individual, Your Honor, isn't hearsay.
Well, it's an out-of-court statement if it's being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. But you said question, so...
Yes.
For now, I'll let you explore what she may have asked, as in what an inquiry was, but this could real quickly...
I understand.
You don't need to object to it, I'll cut it out if it goes to where I'm not. Why don't you repeat your question?
What did you ask Mr. McIver's sister, Dixie?
I asked why they were having the sale so soon.
And you remember asking that?
Yes.
We talked a lot before about the ranch property, sort of the layout and the details of it. When Diane married Mr. McIver, to your knowledge, did she come in and make any changes to the ranch? Or did she do anything to change the ranch in any way?
Yes, they built this was during the time they were planning their wedding. They built the saloon or house behind the house at that time.
And did she make any other changes to the ranch that you know about? Any other additions?
Her specifically, it was them together that made them. They built the pool behind the house. There was a pool there, but they tore that out, I think, and built another one.
We've been talking about a conversation that you had with members of the district attorney's office in the months that followed Mrs. McIver's passing. After this conversation we've been talking about here in your living room, did you continue a friendship with Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And as you sit here today, how would you describe the relationship that you have with him?
Friend. I haven't been able to speak to him since he's been out on...
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Did I,
Yeah, let's be careful about how we move forward.
I will. Have you been able to talk to Mr. McIver since this case has been pending?
Okay, I'm a little confused, so...
Yeah, why don't you two come over here, please?
Talking specifically about the conversation in January at Alon's with members of the office, Mr. Rucker, other investigators. After that conversation, did you then have a conversation with Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And during that conversation, did he ask you about the content of the interview that you did with our office?
Yes.
And where did that conversation take place that you had with Mr. McIver?
In his condo.
Okay. So an in-person conversation.
Yes.
And during that conversation, did Mr. McIver take notes to your knowledge?
He was always taking notes.
And did you essentially give him the details of that interview or that conversation that you had with our office?
As much as I could remember, I didn't record it, so I don't remember everything, but yes.
Sure. Ms. Calhoun, we talked about the conversations you had with the defendant, specifically the details related to how Mrs. McIver passed, how she was killed. At any point in any of those conversations, did Mr. McIver mention to you a bump?
I don't remember that he did.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor. Penny redirect.
Okay, Ms. Clark Palmer?
Yes. Thank you, Judge. Ms. Calhoun, how are you? Okay, so my name's Amanda Clark Palmer, but you and I have talked on the phone before, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you told us that you had known, you knew Mr. McIver before you knew Diane McIver, correct?
Yes.
All right. And I think you told us that you met him in like about 1997?
Yes.
Okay. And then you explained sort of kind of the brief dating or maybe romantic relationship that the two of you had. And then it sounded to me like there was some time after that you didn't really see him for some period of time.
Correct.
And then you became reacquainted when you moved into the villas. Is that a fair way to say it?
No, I met my husband at a party at the Villas in 1999, and Tex was at that same party, so that's,
Okay.
I think, the first time I'd seen him since then.
Since 1997?
Since 1997, 98.
All right. And then friendship developed between you and Diane, right?
Yes,
And you all became very close.
yes,
And she was like a sister to you.
yes,
And you were also friends with Tex, right?
yes,
And you had many opportunities to observe Tex and Diane's relationship, right?
yes,
And how they treated each other.
yes.
You told us that you would see, well, I wasn't clear. I thought I heard you say you would see Tex and Diane maybe 2 to 3 times a week, or was that just Diane?
Sometimes Diane by herself, because Tex did some overnight trips for his work. So I would see her when he wasn't there also.
But many times you were there when Tex and Diane were together?
Yes,
All right. And you observed that they had a loving relationship?
yes,
All right. And you were asked to describe, I think on direct, you were asked to describe their relationship. And it was, to you, it appeared to be a very good relationship?
yes,
Never saw them argue?
no,
Okay. You also got to, you know who Austin Schwall is, you told us about that, right?
yes,
And you know that Austin is Tex and Diane's godson, correct?
yes,
And you were asked about Diane's relationship with Austin, and you told us that they had a very close relationship, right?
yes,
And you told us that Diane treated Austin as if he was her own son.
yes,
And you also got a chance to observe Tex and Austin's relationship, didn't you?
yes,
And am I correct that Tex also treated Austin as if he was his own son?
yes, he did.
All right. So I'd like to show you some exhibits that I've marked as 3A, 3B, and 3C, sort of a composite exhibit.
Okay,
So just look at those, and after you've looked at all of them, let me know if I can ask you some questions about them.
okay.
Do you recognize the people who are depicted in defendants 3A, 3B, and 3C?
3A is Diane and Tex, and it would be a new colt that was born.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. 3A was Diane and Tex, and it was a new colt little horse that was born. 3B was Diane and Tex at the ranch, sitting on a sofa. And 3C, it was Diane and Tex, and I'm not sure what function they were going to, but they were dressed for a party.
Your Honor, I would move to admit defendants exhibit 3A, 3B, and 3C.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
3A through C are admitted.
May I publish?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want me to ask permission if they've been admitted? Do I need to ask permission to
No,
publish?
unless we've had some discussion outside the presence of the jury, admitted means published.
Okay. Ms. Calhoun, this is Defendant's Exhibit 3A, and you were describing it for us, but just so the jury can follow along. Am I pointing right now to Diane McIver?
Yes,
And am I pointing to Tex McIver?
yes,
And you said this was a new colt that had been born?
yes.
All right. And then you told us in 3B that this was Diane McIver?
Yes,
And Tex McIver
yes,
has his arm around her?
yes,
And this picture appears to be taken at the ranch?
yes,
And then 3C, not the best quality picture. This is Tex McIver,
yes,
and this is Diane McIver.
yes,
And you said it appeared as if they were dressed to go to some kind of party function?
yes.
All right. All right, let me show you two other pictures. And just look at these and let me know when I can ask you some questions about those. And I previously marked them as defendants 10A and 10B. In 10A, can you identify the people who are in that picture?
Tex McIver, Austin Schwall, and Diane McIver.
Okay. And in defendants exhibit 10B, is Austin Schwall in that picture?
Yes,
Is Tex McIver in that picture?
yes.
Are there some other people in that picture that you maybe don't know who they are?
I don't know who they are. They look like,
Okay, just,
okay, no, I don't know who they are.
all right. But do those pictures fairly and accurately represent Tex McIver, Diane McIver, and Austin Schwall?
Yes,
All right. Your Honor, I would move to admit defendants 10A and 10B.
No objection.
No objection, they're admitted.
And I'm just going to publish by holding them up to the jury.
Thank you.
Ms. Calhoun, 10A, you told us that this has Tex McIver and Diane McIver and Austin Schwall in it, right? Am I right?
correct.
And Austin is wearing a baseball uniform?
Yes,
Okay. Do you know if Tex and Diane would go to Austin's baseball games?
yes, everyone.
Okay. And in 10B, you see Tex McIver, correct?
Yes,
And Austin Schwall is in this picture?
yes.
Could you point where Austin Schwall is, or this one?
Yes,
Right, publish that for the jury. Is this Mr. McIver in the Boy Scouts leader uniform?
yes,
And Austin Schwall in the Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts uniform?
yes.
Do you know if Mr. McIver was a troop leader for Austin's Boy Scouts?
I think he was, yes.
It's fair to say that both Diane and Tex were very involved in Austin's life, right?
Yes, they were.
Did you know that Diane was married before she met Tex?
Yes,
Right, and she got a divorce from her first husband, right?
yes.
Was that divorce acrimonious? Do you know?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevant.
Your Honor, it goes to, I think, finances that we're going to be talking about later on.
Okay, you're going to limit it
Yes.
to her understanding, I
Yes.
guess, based on some foundation as to whether it was simply acrimonious or not.
Yes.
Okay,
If she knows.
hold on.
Your Honor, just so I don't have to interrupt again, the state's objection to this line of questioning would be the same as Ms. Clark Palmer's on several of my others, which would be hearsay. It calls for an out-of-court statement as the basis for that knowledge, so the state would object to hearsay on this one.
Sure, so why don't you lay the foundation as to how this witness would know whether something that didn't involve her was acrimonious unless someone told her, and then perhaps who that someone was who told her.
Well, Your Honor, I would also say we had a lot of background information about, through this witness, about Mrs. McIver and how she started at U.S. Enterprises when she was 19 years old, which would be before Ms. Calhoun knew her, and I didn't object to any of that. So I think
Okay.
this follows the same. And it's just this one question.
Object to a lot of things, though, so there happens
I
to be...
didn't object to that.
There happens to be an objection here. You're going to need to lay, in the face of the state's objection, you're going to need to lay a foundation.
So let me start back there. Right, you told us that you knew Mrs. McIver was married before she was married to Mr. McIver, correct?
Yes.
How about, you know that Mr. McIver was married before he met Mrs. McIver?
Yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And at the time that you got to know Tex and Diane together, neither one of them was married at that point in time, correct?
They were planning their marriage when I met Diane.
I'm sorry, what I meant to say, they weren't married to other people.
No.
Okay. And you, we went through a lot of pictures on your direct about the ranch out in Eatonton, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And is it fair to say that Diane did some decorating at the ranch?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go out to the ranch before you knew Diane?
Yes.
Okay.
And were there changes that were made to the ranch after Diane met Mr. McIver?
Yes.
Okay, including decorations, right?
Yes.
Including some additions and improvements that were made to the ranch, right?
Yes.
And those were things that either Diane did, right?
Yes.
Or things that Diane and Tex did together?
Yes.
Okay.
And you spent time at the ranch with both Tex and Diane, you told us.
Yes.
And both Tex and Diane enjoyed spending time out at the ranch, correct?
Yes.
They went out there every weekend or almost every weekend
Yes.
together?
Yes.
Fair to say that Diane loved to spend time out at the ranch.
Yes, she did.
So then you were asked about what happened in September when Diane died. And you were asked about how you found out that something had happened, right?
Yes.
And you told us about some text messages, right?
Yes.
You also got a voicemail, didn't you?
Yes.
From Mr. McIver?
Yes.
And he said there has been an accident?
Yes.
Okay. And this is while you're still in Texas?
Correct.
And then you come back to Atlanta?
Yes.
And you get to Atlanta, did you tell us on Tuesday?
Monday night.
Monday night, the 26th.
Yes.
And it's that night that Danny Jo Carter stays at your place?
Yes.
And she stays there the next night?
Yes.
And during that time, you told us that there were people who were spending the night at the McIver's condo.
Yes.
You were asked if Ann Catterton or Annie Anderson was one of the people who spent the night.
Yes.
And she did.
Yes.
And Rachel Stiles, do you know Miss Stiles?
Yes.
Did she spend the night at the McIver's condominium?
I believe she did.
Were there other people who were spending the night there the week after Diane died that you can recall?
Those two I know for sure stayed in his condo.
Okay. And you told us that Danny Jo Carter stayed with you those 2 nights.
Yes.
And then you had to ask her to leave, correct?
Yes.
And you had to ask her to leave. Well, you know Miss Carter, don't you?
Yes.
You know that you had to ask Miss Carter to leave after the second night because she was drinking, correct?
Yes.
And you know that she was not supposed to be drinking.
And when you found out she had been drinking again, you asked her to leave.
Yes.
You got to see Mr. McIver in those days and that week after Diane passed away.
Yes.
And you saw that he was crying.
Yes.
He was upset.
Yes.
You described yourself as being in a daze in the days after Diane died, right?
Yes.
It was traumatic's probably not even a strong enough word to describe what had happened, right?
Correct.
Devastating,
Yes.
because you were so close with Diane.
Yes.
Let me go back. I was asking you who else you remembered stayed at Mr. McIver's condo. Do you know who Phyllis Gable is?
Yes.
Is that Mrs. McIver and Mr. McIver's kind of housekeeper?
Yes.
Did she stay at the McIver's condominium after Diane died?
Her condo was right across the street from where ours was, and I believe Phyllis went to her condo and stayed those nights.
Was she in, not for spending the night, but otherwise was she at the condominium
Yes.
during that week?
Yes.
Okay. Wanda Hughes, do you know her?
Yes.
Was she at the McIver's condominium in the days and the week after Diane died?
I believe she was. A lot of days, yes.
And you told us you saw maybe, your estimate's 15 to 20 people who were in the condo that Monday night, right?
Yes.
And we've
Yes.
only named a handful of them, so there's some other people.
Yes.
Okay. Is it maybe just hard to recall those details now? All those people?
Everybody is hard to remember. I know Dr. Hughes was there, and I think Sally with him, and Dee and Richard Harrell were there one of the nights. That's just people, Spike, his brother, and Sherry were there sometime during that week.
Just a lot of people were
in
there?
and out, yes.
Okay. You were asked if you went to the auction of Diane's, some of her belongings, and you said you attended that?
Yes,
That auction was in January of 2017,
I think that's right.
some 3.5, 4 months after she died?
Yes.
Okay. And then you told us about, or you were asked on direct about this, a conversation that you had with the DA's office, right?
Yes.
And then you were asked if you went, if after that you had a conversation with Mr. McIver, right?
Yes.
And you told us that you talked to him afterwards, and he was taking notes about what you told him that you had talked to the DA's office about, correct?
Yes.
He didn't ask you to go back and lie to the DA, did he?
No.
Okay. He didn't ask you to go back and change your story to the DA, did he?
No.
Okay. You knew Tex and Diane McIver for more than 10 years?
Yes.
You never saw them argue?
No.
They were very much in love?
Yes.
Were they the perfect couple just about?
They seem to be better than perfect.
Thank you.
Any redirect, Ms. Conver?
Yes, briefly. Ms. Calhoun, we've been talking about the auction, and I think at one point I called it a sale. The auction we've been talking about, is that different from the estate sale that also took place?
No.
Okay, to your knowledge, was there more than one sale related to Mrs. McIver's items?
Yes.
Okay, and when were each of those?
I think it was on different days, but both I consider to be an auction.
Okay, but two separate auctions in
Yes.
your mind?
Yes.
We talked about a little on cross, you were asked about who stayed over at the condo, and I think you said Ms. Stiles stayed there, and before we talked about Ms. Catterton or Ms. Anderson staying there.
Yes.
Where did they sleep in the condo, if you know?
I don't know exactly. I wasn't there.
Is it your testimony that you don't know where either of them slept?
No.
Mr. McIver left you a voicemail saying that there had been an accident, and then we talked about this conversation afterwards. Did he ever tell you that he actually pulled the trigger on the gun? Did he ever admit that to you?
No.
We talked, on direct, I asked you a lot about your relationship with Diane, and on cross you were asked about sort of the context of that with Austin. At any point before Mrs. McIver's passing, did you have a conversation with her about wills, or her will?
Yes.
And tell the jurors how that conversation came up.
I'm sorry, I would object as being outside scope of cross-examination.
Your Honor, it's within, you previously ruled on it, and it's related directly to the issue of Mrs. McIver's relationship with Austin, which was handled extensively on cross.
Give me 1 second. Okay. I think that's, I'll allow the question.
Can you tell the jury how that conversation came up, how that started?
We were having dinner at my place, and I brought up the conversation. I said I wanted to make some changes to my will because my grandkids were getting older. And she said, well, I've made some changes to mine. I've taken some people out that I'm leaving some money to that I don't want them to be in there anymore. And she said, matter of fact, I've left you money in there, but there's a caveat. You have to divorce your husband. And I just laughed at her and I said, that's not going to happen, so I guess you can keep your money. And we both laughed about it. And that was the end of the conversation. We didn't talk about it anymore.
Do you remember about when that conversation was?
It was about 3 years, or I think about 3 years before she passed away.
And so would this conversation have been after Austin was born?
Yes.
After 2006?
Yes.
In the conversation that you had with Mr. McIver, Mr. Corey, and...
I'm sorry, are we moving on from the will?
Yep.
No?
So I would like to go back and object because I thought the answer to my objection was that this linked back up to dealing with Austin, and I didn't hear Ms. Calhoun say anything about Austin other than this conversation was after Austin was born.
That's exactly how the conversation came up, related to changes in the will, which should have been after the birth of Austin Schwall in 2006. So
Okay, but I was under the impression, you've preserved the objection, and there may well be something that I need to address. I'm going to let this wrap up because I need to talk to you all when the jurors aren't in here, but I'm not going to send them out right now.
Ms. Calhoun, last question on that issue. During your conversation with her, the one that we just spoke about, and any other conversation, did Mrs. McIver tell you that she was going to leave the ranch to Austin?
So objection, Your Honor. Could we approach?
Okay,
Do I need to ask the question again?
you should. The microphone is yours, but assume there's no question on the floor right now.
Ms. Calhoun, at any point during that conversation that we've just been talking about, the will conversation, or at any other time, did Mrs. McIver tell you that she was leaving the ranch to Austin?
Not exactly just her, by herself. She and Tex both made that comment when I've been at the ranch before. They would tell Austin, this is going to be yours one day.
And is it your testimony to this jury that a previous statement, if you've said that before, if you've communicated that before, that it was from both the defendant and Mrs. McIver.
Yes,
They're together.
yes. Not at the same, not, okay, can I say a little bit
You
more?
can explain your answer.
Okay. Diane had said it, but then she and Tex had said it when I was at the ranch before, together, both of them. I mean, Austin would pick up rocks on the ranch because they said, you're going to have this one day, you have to have money to run the ranch.
Okay. So we're talking about separate statements. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You said Diane had said it, and then together they said it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. Mr. McIver told you, talking about what happened, the actual shooting itself, Mr. McIver told you that the SUV stopped, correct?
Yes.
And he tells you that the gun went off.
Just objection leading, Your Honor.
I'll rephrase.
It's redirect.
Yes, I understand. Did Mr. McIver tell you that the gun went off somehow?
Yes.
And did he ever tell you that the gun went off as a result of him squeezing the trigger?
No.
Did Mr. McIver tell you about a puff of smoke or a cloud of smoke after the shooting itself?
Yes.
And all of these details are primarily the detail that we've just been talking about. What was the date of that conversation where you got that detail from Mr. McIver? About?
Within a week after it happened.
And was it in one of those conversations that we've been talking about there in the living room of your condo?
Yes.
All right. Is that the 20th? Would that have been the next day? So the Tuesday or Wednesday after the shooting?
I don't remember exactly the date.
So to your best recollection, it is that week that immediately followed the shooting,
Yes.
though, correct? All right. Just one moment. You told, we talked about Danny Jo actually staying the night at your condo, and how many nights did she stay there?
2.
Do you remember which night that conversation took place?
With her?
With the details conversation that we talked about with Mr. McIver in relation to when Danny Jo actually stayed at your house?
No, with him, it was just that week. I don't know exactly what.
And would that conversation have been one of the nights that Danny Jo was your guest, was actually still staying at your condo?
Tex was not ever at my place during that time at night.
And so the conversation that you told us about in the living room, I think you told the jurors that Danny Jo was there first, and then at some point later, Mr. McIver came over.
Yes, and Danny left.
And was she still a guest, an overnight guest at your condo during that conversation?
Yes.
And that would have been in the days immediately following the shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, now's the time to jot them down on a little 3x5 card. And I think we'll have you pass them to your left, so Deputy Murphy can collect them down there at the corner. Ms. Clark Palmer, we okay with that?
Subject to all the things we've talked.
When was that in relation to Ms. McIver's passing? A day later, a month later?
No, I think the auction was I want to say it was in January, I think.
Okay. You mentioned there being two different, you call them both auctions, two different auctions. How far apart were those?
Just days, I think.
Your recollection is both were in January?
Yes.
Ms. Conway, do you have any follow-up with Ms. Calhoun in connection with that?
Just very briefly, Ms. Calhoun, we've talked a lot, drilled you on dates. Your recollection about the relationship of the two auctions to each other, could that be incorrect? The distance, the amount of time between the two auctions? Or are you?
It could have been. I mean, it was in the paper. I would think it could be gone back and looked at. I just didn't. I don't.
But our jurors aren't going to do that.
You can't do that, and I don't remember exactly. So.
That's it.
Ms. Clark Palmer, anything on that topic?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Calhoun step down?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Next witness.
Your Honor, just, she, certainly if the state's position will be that she's released but not excused.
You all will manage that, but she's free to go right now, and you may need to work with her if there's somewhere else she needs to be.
Yes.
State's next witness.
Yes. State calls Mr. Jim Nation. And good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rucker.
Counsel. Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Nation.
If you will, raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you should give the court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, sir, if you will. Have a seat. And as close to the mic as possible. For the records of the court, please state your name and spelling.
James Nations, Nations.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm going to let this big old guy just set it up right there against the wall. Could you reintroduce yourself to the jurors by stating your name and telling them how you are currently employed?
Sure. My name is James Nations, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Fisher Phillips.
Okay. And can you explain to the jurors what is Fisher Phillips?
Fisher Phillips is a national law firm. We represent clients in the area of labor and employment.
Okay. And, now's the time it's okay to brag and a little plug for the firm. How long has the firm been in existence?
Around 80 years.
Okay.
It's a very well-respected firm in its industry. It's considered one of the firms that nationally well-known as a brand name in our area of expertise.
Yes, sir. And can you share with the jurors, as Chief Financial Officer, what are some of your duties and responsibilities?
I'm responsible for the overall financial reporting, the processing of billings, collections, paying the bills, payroll, taxes, audit, and relationships with many of our vendors, such as bankers and insurance vendors.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors, are you the custodian of the records there at Fisher Phillips with respect to financial matters?
Yes, I will be considered the records custodian for financial affairs.
Yes. And included within financial affairs, that would also cover attorney salaries.
Correct.
Okay. And could you tell the jurors just a little bit about your educational background that allows you to perform your duties there as Chief Financial Officer?
I have a bachelor's degree in accounting, and I served in public accounting for several years when I started my career. I'm a certified public accountant in the states of Tennessee and Missouri, and I've worked in industry since I graduated from college in 1982, primarily in financial areas. I worked in law firms specifically since 2002.
Okay. And how long have you been with Fisher Phillips?
I joined Fisher Phillips on March 20th, 2017.
Now, in connection with your testimony here this afternoon, were you asked to produce to my office at some time that's since passed some documents in particular?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell the jurors what is it that you were asked to produce, and were you able to produce it?
I was asked to produce the compensation to Mr. McIver since I believe it was 2003 through 2017.
Okay.
And yes, I was able to produce those records from the ordinary records in the company.
Okay. And you can say to the judge and to the jury that those records that you produce, they are kept within the ordinary course of the business there at Fisher Phillips.
That is true. They were kept in the ordinary course of business.
And they are true and accurate?
Yes, sir.
You have not done anything to manipulate those figures?
Correct.
And as a custodian of record, you would be the person that would be in a position to turn them over?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to show you an exhibit, Your Honor. It is marked for purposes of the record. It states exhibit number 132. It has previously been shown to Ms. Clark Farmer, and a copy provided to her there too. Would you take a look at that document, please, Mr. Nations, and tell the judge and the jury whether or not you recognize and can identify that document?
Yes, this is the document that I prepared for you.
Okay. I want you to take a look at this board. First go to Ms. Clark Palmer. I don't think she'll have an objection.
Ms. Clark Palmer. Ms. Cook, I know
Yes,
you have a little conflict.
Right, and I have no objection to Exhibit 132?
Yes, ma'am.
Being admitted. I know we haven't gotten there, but I'm just telling you. I
Okay,
don't
well
object
then-
to it.
Previewing your strategy. Okay.
Okay, well then in that case, Judge, I would tender State's Exhibit 132 into evidence.
There being no objection, 132 is admitted.
All right. And will you take a look at this very quickly, Mr. Nations, and can you tell the judge and the jury whether or not this law board is an exact replica of the front page of your document that's listed there, States 132?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. With the court's permission, I would like to be able to use this as a demonstrative.
Okay, and you've seen it small scale, and you're okay with it big scale.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, good.
What? Mr. Nations, you let me have that back? I promise it's going to come up on that screen right next to you.
Okay.
We've got this fancy machine right here. Okay, can you see it?
It's not very clear.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's just orient the jurors just a little bit first, and then I'm going to zoom in on some particulars, okay?
Okay.
You know, kind of like we were 8 years old. Can you explain to us kind of what this document shows?
Sure. If you start in the upper left corner, there's the title says status. I think that's what it says. Yes. thank you.
Status?
Status, yes. And beneath that, you'll see the letter EP, and that stands in our vernacular for equity partner.
Okay.
And if you follow that down to 2014, it says IP, which stands for income partner.
Okay. And then 2015 also?
Yes.
Income partner?
Yes.
And 2016 also income partner?
Yes.
Okay.
And then each calendar year is listed there, the next column over, starting with, I believe that's 2004. And then the compensation that Mr. McIver earned in that year is listed there.
Okay. And 2005, 2006, 2007, all the way down to 2013.
Correct.
And then, do you see this little A along with this long line right here?
Yes, sir.
Who put that there?
I did.
And can you explain to the jurors, why did you put that there?
I put that there to reference the supporting documents behind this one page, to reference the pay schedule from where those numbers came from.
Okay. So, Mr. Nations, if we could start, is that a little bit better? Can you see that?
I can see that well, yes, thank you.
Okay. And so, if we can start with under status, 2004, EP stands for equity partner.
Correct.
Explain to the jurors what that means in the context of employment officials.
Okay. An equity partner refers to a true partner who has an ownership interest in the firm. That means he had ownership rights, and his compensation was based on the earnings and profits of the firm each month as they occurred.
Right. And in 2004, that number that's under compensation, what does that represent or reflect?
That represents the compensation that was paid to him for the fiscal year 2004.
As an equity partner, in this case, the defendant would have received that compensation as part of his percentage of the net profits for the firm.
Correct.
Okay. And for the record, Mr. Nations, could you tell the jurors in 2004 what was the compensation for the defendant?
$568,991.
Okay. And in 2005, what was the compensation?
$556,524.
How about 2006?
$507,418.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you know the defendant personally?
No, sir, I do not.
Because when you got to Fisher Phillips, was the defendant still employed with the firm?
No, sir.
Okay. 2007, how'd he do?
$593,433.
2008,
$590,078.
2009,
$576,321.
How about 2010?
$580,130.
And in 2011, he kind of went up a little bit. What was the compensation for the defendant in 2011?
$601,853.
And 2012 and 2013?
$561,698 and $435,603, respectively.
Okay. Now, in 2014, there appears to be a drop in the compensation paid to the defendant in this case. Can you explain that to the jurors?
Well, his status changed from equity partner to income partner. And as it relates to Fisher Phillips, that means he became what we call a W-2 employee. So his salary was set at $350,000 that year.
And is that what the IP reflects that we see displayed on the chart?
Correct.
Okay. And so at this point in 2014, is it fair to say that the defendant would no longer share in the percentage of the profit, the net profits of the firm? He now is being paid a set salary.
Correct.
How much did he make in 2014?
2014, $350,000.
And how about 2015?
$346,620.
Okay. And how about 2016?
$275,000.
And in 2016, that $275,000 figure, does that reflect his compensation for the entire 12-month calendar year?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have a figure that would reflect how much the defendant had earned in 2016 as of September the 25th, 2016?
I do not have that number.
Fair to say, though, it would be less than $275,000.
That's a fair statement.
Now, we see also on the chart, there is some language as well as a lettering system. Can you tell the jurors who did that?
I did that.
And why did you do that?
The lettering system, again, refers to the supporting documents behind the first page, so it references where those numbers came from. And the comments were to clarify any additional payments made to Mr. McIver.
Okay. And so, is that zoomed in enough for you to see it?
I believe I can see that, yes.
Okay. So when we look at, I'm going to slide it so we can reference the jurors. Calendar year 2013, compensation was $435,603. You made a notation with respect to an additional payment.
Correct.
And can you explain that to the jurors?
Sure. An additional payment of $7,643 was paid to him for a return of capital. And I believe there's a subsequent one later. Yes, there was coded F there. So the number under what is highlighted as B, the $7,643, was a rebalancing of capital. At Fisher Phillips, the partner's capital is balanced each year based on their percent of ownership within the firm. So as his compensation would have gone down, there would have been a return of some of his capital that year.
Okay.
And I'm just to clarify, that's money he had previously paid into the firm as an owner of the firm.
Okay. I was just going to ask you to explain to the jurors what the capital means. But as an equity partner, an owner in the firm, he would have paid money into the firm.
Correct.
And as his income status changed, then there's a reduction in his salary.
His compensation.
His compensation. He becomes a salary attorney.
Not at that point. I don't believe he was an income partner at that point.
Okay. It is, do you know exactly when his status would have changed?
If you slide it over to the left, I believe it was at the end of 2013. So one little bit more, please, so I can see the IP.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, he became an income partner January 1, 2014. So his equity partner status ceased at 12/31/13.
Okay. His equity partnership status ended December the 31st, 2013.
Yes, sir.
All right. You've got a notation here. Could you explain that to the jurors?
Yes, sir. As an income partner, he participated in at least one of our qualified retirement plans, this one being a mandatory contribution, so that as I note there, his base wages were $330,000, plus he made a contribution of $19,851 to the qualified retirement plan. So his compensation was a total of $350,000.
Okay.
In addition to that, there was a profit-sharing contribution, which is a firm contribution made on his behalf of $5,200.
Okay.
And then you'll see the last payment there of his return of all of his capital of $47,493. Base wages, and was that 2015? I lost track of years there.
Yep.
2015, so his base wages were $329,724. He made a mandatory contribution of $16,896 for a total compensation of $346,620, and then the firm made a contribution on his behalf of $7,900.
Okay. And finally, in 2016, when compensation was $275,000 for the total year. Could you
Correct.
just explain that notation?
So his base wages were $255,676. His mandatory contribution to the profit-sharing plan was $19,324 for a total of $275, and then the firm made a contribution of $7,670.
Okay. Okay. Could you share with the jurors who is Roger Quillen?
Roger Quillen is the chairman of the firm,
Okay.
and he has been for several years. I don't know exactly.
Okay. Was he still outside before you came in?
He is still out there.
Okay, good, good. Thank you very much, sir. That is all my questions. Your Honor.
Ms. Clark-Palmer, questions for Mr. Nations?
Good afternoon, Mr. Nation. My name is Amanda Clark Palmer. I represent Mr. McIver. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good. You work for Fisher and Phillips, you told us, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're not a lawyer,
Correct.
but they are a law firm.
Yes, ma'am.
They represent employers.
Management side, labor and employment is the tagline, yes.
Okay. So if you know, they defend employers who are being sued. Is that right? Do you know?
I wouldn't say it's limited to that, but I think you're generally correct.
Is that a question I should probably put to Mr. Clement?
Yes, that would be best suited for him.
All right. So I just want to do a little bit of math with you, which should be fun. Based on our demonstrative exhibit, let me give you a copy to look at there. I just want to make sure I'm real clear
Sure.
on what you just told us, and I'm going to write some numbers down. Okay. So first of all, I noticed that on 132, where it says compensation, for the years that Mr. McIver, most of the years he was an equity partner, to 2004 to 2012, all you have written down is just the compensation number, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we have these comments that you have added for 2013 going forward, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So the compensation number, I think I heard you tell us, is not necessarily the total amount of funds that Mr. McIver received from Fisher and Phillips, correct?
I don't understand the question. Would you say that again, please?
So for example, in 2013, Mr. McIver received approximately $435,000 in compensation, but then you told us he received some additional funds, a payment of $7,643.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the compensation number alone is not the total amount of funds or money or whatever you want to call it that he got from Fisher and Phillips that year.
The compensation was $435,000. The $7,643 was additional payment made to him, but it was not considered compensation.
It's not compensation, but it comes from Fisher and Phillips.
Correct.
Okay. So let me write down for 2013, you have up there he gets $435,603
Yes, ma'am.
for his, I'm just going to abbreviate it, comp, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And then $7,643 was the return of capital. And you gave us the total 246. 246 for 2013, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So 2014, what's his compensation number?
$350,000.
Even?
Yes, ma'am.
But then you told us on top of that, he gets the profit sharing of $5,200
Yes.
and the $47,493.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so if I do my math right, in 2014, that totals up to $402,693.
I believe you're right.
Okay. 2015, what's his compensation number?
$346,620.
And in that year, he gets the profit sharing of $7,900.
Yes.
So if I add that up, gosh, 354,520.
I believe that's correct.
And then 2016, his compensation was $275,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the profit sharing was $7,670.
Yes, ma'am.
If I do my math right, $282,670.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this document, this first page of document of the exhibit, you told us you prepared this, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, wasn't something that was kept at the firm in this particular format?
Correct. I prepared this based on the supporting documents behind it.
All right. Right, there were documents that were kept at the firm that you got these numbers from?
Correct.
And what's not included, or what would not be included on State's Exhibit 132, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you had like a 401k, you would not have put that on this document. The first page of the document, you see State's 132.
That, correct, because that would have been withheld from his wages, just like most employees would be.
Right. And this may seem like a silly question, but if he was getting income from some other source outside the law firm, you would not have put that on this document.
Correct.
You are just here to tell the jury what funds, compensation, profit sharing, whatever, came from Fisher and Phillips to Mr. McIver.
Correct.
And you told us that you arrived at the firm in 2017.
Correct.
Which was after Mr. McIver retired from the firm, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know him personally?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Any redirect, Mr. Rucker?
No, sir.
Any questions from the jurors, Mr. Nation? Seeing no movement. Oh, there is one. All right, Deputy Murphy. Mr. Nations, you are free to go. Thank you. Thank you. Next witness.
Yes.
I can guess.
Can you guess? The state would call Mr. Roger Quillen.
Okay, let's take a quick break. Someone needs a break.
Yes,
So
yes,
we're
yes.
going to take a 5-minute break. We may take a longer one before the day is out. This could be a quick one. We're getting some momentum here, but someone needs to take a break. So So I'm going to ask you all to retire to the jury room. I'm going to try to keep it to 5. Obviously, if you need more time, you get it. But if you don't, we'll get you back out here and we'll talk about the case back in the jury room. Thank you.